on a night like any other. Bob Sajanowski explains that the streets of Brooklyn are not the safest in the world. All the money there passes from hand to hand until it reaches a drop bar. A place chosen at random to be the safe deposit box for the entire city, even if the owners don't know when their bars will be the new drops. They just have to accept the money without asking too many questions. He explains that his job is just to tend to Cousin Marvin's bar and wait. On a new night, a group of men toast an old friend with a drink on the house, something that Marvin, the former owner of the place, doesn't see quite right. Bob justifies himself by saying that it's been 10 years since young Richie Wellen disappeared. But people don't seem to forget him so easily. Marvin also calls Bob's bluff about his favorable treatment of another regular client, Millie, a sad old lady who always seems to stay there late. Despite appearances in his job, Bob is actually a nice guy, attends church, and gets along well with people. Even for being a small talking guy, as he walks along in the streets, he manages to hear something in the distance, but can't quite make out what it is. On a closer inspection, he notices that a small boxer puppy is crying desperately and bleeding in a trash can. Upon rescuing him, Bob meets the house owner, and although he explains the situation to her, she is more fearful of the man's presence in her yard. After taking his picture for her safety, the woman introduces herself as Nadia and invites Bob inside. They treat the puppy's wound, and Bob learns that Nadia is a waitress who worked as an animal rescuer some time ago. She clarifies to Bob that the puppy is not a boxer, but a pit bull, a breed that is difficult to find a home for. Bob has the same idea as the other people, believing that pit bulls are a dangerous breed, but Nadia explains that their bad reputation is mostly the owner's fault. Amid the conversation, Bob can't help but notice some marks on Nadia's neck, but she immediately changes the subject, offering him a crate for the puppy. She can't keep the dog because she works at night, and Bob clarifies that he can't keep the dog either. As he was just passing through, Nadia tells him that the dog will be taken to the shelter, giving a week for the owner to show up. Otherwise, it will be put up for adoption, although Bob is reluctant to accept the responsibility. He asks Nadia to keep the puppy for a couple of days to think about it. He talks to Marvin about it, and Marvin tells him that it's just a dog and shouldn't be seen as an impossible responsibility to take care of. After a regular night at the bar, a couple of masked crooks burst in after everyone had left, demanding the day's money. Marvin tries to have a dialogue with them, but they are too nervous to talk. Bob notices something about the watch on one of them, as it seems to be stopped at a specific time. Once the robbers leave, Bob and Marvin immediately look for Rardy, the bar's doorman, who is lying in an alley, wounded. When the situation passes, Detective Evandro Torres appears, introducing himself to Bob as one of the parishioners who always sees him at the church. Torres investigates what happened, and Bob tells him about the watch's clue. He also comments that only the money from the register was taken, with no mention of any other illicit activity. In their casual conversation, Torres mentions how he has noticed that Bob never takes communion during Mass, but Bob is defensive, saying that it's his own business. As they leave, Marv criticizes Bob for giving a clue about the watch since the crooks didn't really take the big deal that day, and they shouldn't worry about it more, or at least that's what Bob thinks. And Marvin corrects him that the bar owners will want the money back sooner or later. The following day, Bob is the first to arrive at Mass, and after that, he goes to Nadia's to pick up the puppy. She also hands him a dish and some food, but a few seconds after he leaves, a nervous Bob returns to confess to Nadia his inexperience with owning a dog. Together they go shopping, and Nadia explains the basics. When it comes to naming the dog, Bob settles on Rocco after seeing a particular picture of St. Rocco in the church that morning. As they drop Nadia off at her house on their way home, a mysterious guy watches them from a distance. This is how Bob starts dealing with his new life as Rocco's owner. Back at work, Chavka Umarov, the bar owner, appears in front of Marvin and Bob with his men, showing them how they have an injured guy in the back of their van. They talk about the robbery from the other night, and he demands his money back by threatening them. In his investigation, Detective Torres seeks information about Umarov's bar, wanting to know more about Marv and his past with the bar, as he believes he had something to do with the robbery. Marvin is nervous at home, and after leaving, he encounters one of the masked robbers, revealing that it was all a plan he orchestrated. The next morning, Bob walks in the park with Rocco, meeting Nadia while passing. She tells him that he can hire her to watch Rocco while he works at the bar, as the Christmas season is over, and she now has one shift less at the restaurant. At Marv's house, his sister Dottie explains to him how their plugged father will be transferred to a worse place due to unpaid expenses, while she mentions unplugging him. Marv insists on keeping him alive, confident in his plan to rob the bar. The relationship between Bob and Nadia improves thanks to Rocco. But when she leaves the park, the mysterious guy returns, praising the dog, something Bob takes with caution. Sometime later, the same guy shows up at Bob's door, asking about Rocco. Bob tells him that the dog now belongs to him. And the guy leaves, but not before grabbing an umbrella and threatening him. On an outing with Nadia, she comments on how Bob is the only one who doesn't ask about her bruises, and he responds by saying that it's none of his business. She confesses to having hurt herself with a potato peeler during one of her relapses. The outing ends abruptly when a waitress asks them to leave because of Rocco. Marv tells Bob about his nervousness about the Umarov affair, feeling that he is being spied on. And Bob mentions the guy looking for his dog, going out to fix some trash cans. Bob comes across a bag full of money and an arm in it, believing it to be the same money stolen the other night. As it has the same stopped watch on its wrist, he takes it upon himself to bag the arm, with Marvin praising him for how he seems to handle everything professionally, but reproaching him for mentioning the watch clue the other night. As they talk, the mystery guy appears back at the bar, greeting Bob and sending his regards to Nadia, indicating his relationship with her. Marvin explains to Bob that the guy is Eric Deeds, a dangerous thug in the slums, and that he should watch out for him as he is said to be the one who made Richie Wellen disappear. Bob takes care of the arm, throwing it into the sea while playing with Rocco. But right after that, Detective Torres appears, telling him that they are still investigating the robbery. He mentions Eric Deeds and how he used to work at the bar, but Bob denies everything. He then goes to Nadia's to drop Rocco off. He mentions Eric Deeds, starting a small argument with her that concludes with Nadia leaving in a huff. After telling Marvin about this mishap, Umarov shows up at the bar. Bob offers him a drink and the money, which he accepts and comments on how the next drop job is during Super Bowl night. When Bob arrives to pick up Rocco, Nadia apologizes for her attitude and departs. He's just concerned about her relationship with Deeds and that Deeds is harping on Rocco. Nadia confesses that Deeds used to be her boyfriend, but after a while, their relationship became complicated, so they split up. Bob doesn't judge her and says neither he nor Rocco blame her for anything. She asks him about his relationship with the bar, and Bob tells her that Marvin is actually his real cousin, so they've known each other for a long time. Bob used to be in a crew before, which managed to make a buck back in the old days, but he gave up that life, and now he just hangs out at the bar. In parallel, Marv is looking for Fitz, one of the accomplices in the robbery, who tells Marv about his brother's disappearance. Marv tells him about the Super Bowl job, but Fitz prefers to keep his distance. Before leaving him, Marv asks to close the car's trunk, but when Fitz does so, Marv runs him over from behind, leaving the crime scene in a new car. When Bob leaves Nadia at her house, he finds the umbrella that Deeds took a few days ago in Rocco's cage. Marv meets Deeds in a coffee shop and tries to have a dialogue with him. Apparently, Deeds doesn't like the idea of Bob feeling superior to his dog, so Marvin offers them a solution to their problem. Detective Torres manages to get his hands on Deeds' file and is intrigued by what he reads. Knowing something else about his story, he goes to Deeds' house, and Deeds tells him he will let it all go if he gives him 10 grand the next day. If he doesn't, he'll go to the police and have his dog returned to torture it at his pleasure. Bob then visits Marv and explains that they will have temporary employees for Super Bowl night. Bob tells him about his suspicions regarding the robbery and how Marv had something to do with it, but Marv gets angry and asks him to leave, instead of going with Bob for the money. The next morning, Deeds breaks into Nadia's house and forces her to go on a date that night. Much to her dismay, that night at the bar, the customers arrive as Bob keeps nervously attending to them and tending to Umarov's dirty jobs. Everything seems to get worse when, out of nowhere, Nadia appears, accompanied by Deeds. Bob talks to the guy and asks him why he's there with Nadia and why he didn't look for the money in the morning. Deeds doesn't give many answers and talks to Marv on the phone, who tells him not to do anything rash. Instead, when the bar closes, Deeds is left alone with Nadia and Bob, who gives him the money. But, not pleased enough, he asks to check the safe in just 4 minutes. He threatens to hurt Nadia and asks to see Marv. Bob tells him about how Marv used to be a crook and a gambling lover years ago. Then, one day, a guy came into the bar and left with a debt. The kid went to Atlantic City, where he managed to get his hands on 22 grand, managing to pay Marv back. However, they had to get rid of the kid for safety's sake, who they now saw as a business opportunity. Bob took matters into his own hands, disposing of the boy almost inhumanely. The boy was Richie Wellen, for whom Deeds was framed for his disappearance years earlier. While Deeds admits that it was him who took care of Richie, Bob quickly draws and shoots Deeds twice, fulminating him instantly and revealing his cold and heartless nature to Nadia. After that, Bob starts insulting Deeds, with Nadia making him understand what just happened. She asks to leave, and Bob promises her that no one else will ever hurt her again. The girl leaves, promising that she won't say anything about what she saw. But Bob is sure of it. He tells her that he's not like those people around him. Despite everything, as they leave, Marv is seen outside the bar, keeping an eye on everything. Deeds' phone starts ringing, and Bob answers, having his suspicions. Marv is on the other end of the line, but they are both mute to the call. Bob begins preparations to dispose of Deeds' body, then pays a visit to Umarov and his men, along with Rocco. Umarov talks to him about how he spoke to Marv so that Bob would now own the bar. While it is revealed how one of his goons disposes of Marv from a distance, it would now be Bob's bar, and everything would be even as long as he put Umarov's money aside. Bob feels lonelier than ever, and Umarov leaves him. Now, as the new owner, Bob takes over the place, reflecting on how perhaps the devil does not exist. And upon leaving the world, God simply says, "You can't come in. Please go away." The next day, Detective Torres goes to the bar to pay his condolences to Bob, who claims that Marv's deal was a carjacking. But Torres sees it more as an execution. He redirects the conversation to Deeds, whom they mentioned seeing at the bar the night before. The Bob tells us he didn't notice anything unusual because it was Super Bowl night. And the detective explains that, like Richie Wellen, Deeds disappeared without a trace. Torres is confused about all these disappearances, and Bob keeps himself in line by pretending not to have seen anything. He just claims that this is how things happen on those streets and that, in any case, Deeds might even turn up soon, even if it's in an insane asylum. Torres tells him that, in fact, the night Wellen disappeared, Deeds was in an asylum. So the stories don't match. Deeds claimed the story, believing it would give him street cred. But the truth is that they never found the culprit. Before leaving, Torres confesses his suspicions to Bob, who no longer feels safe about it. Rocco walks Rocco to Nadia, to whom he offers never to hear from him again simply by saying so. Instead, she goes to get her jacket, with Bob and Rocco excitedly waiting for her outside.